Okay, so yeah, just quickly want to go through a pretty exciting game. UCL semifinals, so of course I can expect that we can expect that the level of competition, how elite the players are, the individual quality, the individual brilliance is going to be, of course, on display. But of course, tactically, we're looking at the fine margin that the managers have to tread in order to sort of give their team the advantage. Certainly, at this point in time, both teams kind of know each other a lot. Not necessarily because they've played before earlier in the season, but of course they have so much footage on each other. So much analysis has been done prior to the game in terms of what to expect or what not to expect in terms of maybe missing players. So, for example, the Partey not being available for this game or suspended for this game meant that Arsenal were losing some physical quality in the middle of the park. So, of course, for PSG, you look at a situation where how can we use that to our advantage? And early on, we saw Dembele being very, very, very key in terms of establishing that a central sort of a dominance and overload in those areas. What I had initially kind of suggested was that probably Dembele should double up more so with Doué or with Cavara to cause a lot of issues for Arsenal in the wide areas, really get them to overcommit to the wide areas, create more spaces centrally, and then be able to really punish them in those areas over there if Arsenal overcommitted too central to the areas. What they were really, really good at in terms of Dembele's movement was giving the Arsenal centre backs and the midfielders no reference point. You know, they didn't know on who to hook on or where to hook on or what spaces to sort of occupy and mark and sort of kind of close down. Then Dembele was moving to all sorts of places, and Vitinha, Ruiz were doing a really good job in terms of just getting into good situations or good positions, really, sorry, I should say, to be able to balance out his movements and his actions. And that put a lot of strain on Arsenal in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, I would say. My notes, yeah, about 20 minutes, I would say. Put a lot of pressure on them in that regard, trying to understand those reference points. And what then, of course, also happened, like I said, I asked them to double up, or I suggested they would double up, maybe more so, in terms of trying to cause that sort of imbalance in the Arsenal defense or the Arsenal lines. But what I just saw on display was, when you have individual quality, you solve a lot of problems. You know, Doué, unreal player, 1v1, 1v2, you know, being able to commit and just have so much gravity, just pull the players towards him, get them sort of in a situation where they cannot leave him really 1v1 with the defender, because he is going to 9 times out of 10 tear him apart. So, I mean, Skelly did a very good job, but still, those rotations, you know, one time you're getting one look from Cavara, then you're getting one look from Dembele, then you're getting one look from Hakimi, then you're getting one look from Doué, and that constant rotation and change was really, really strenuous on the Arsenal backline. But at some point, they were able to figure that out. And this is where, of course, in elite football, the ability to make adjustments quickly in game becomes really, really important. You know, we were always kind of aware that that physical disadvantage that PSG have was going to play a part in this competition, in this tie, I should say. But to what degree was it going to play that part? How much were Arsenal going to be able to impose that physical will upon PSG, deny their midfield the ability to get on the ball and have control, and then be able to kind of walk them down? And once they were able to kind of get those reference points in terms of the rotations, kind of understand a little bit the patterns of the rotations, you know, and maybe anticipate a little bit better where PSG wanted to go, immediately you saw straight away the physical difference. You saw that once PSG couldn't get those midfielders on the ball anymore, it became a real struggle. They couldn't have control. They couldn't get the ball to those guys, to Ruiz, to Vitinha, to Neves, who in turn couldn't get the ball to Dembele, to Kivicha, to Doué. And even with the rotation from Dembele dropping deeper, making those actions, they had cottoned on to kind of what they wanted to do, and that then I would say from about, if we're looking at 20 to 45, looking at my notes, really, really, the anticipation the players were able to kind of really push PSG back, take away the control, and PSG went, you know, longer ball, tried to bypass the press, because of course at that point in time, once Arsenal established that physical dominance, it was a lot easier for them to just kind of commit more numbers forward, put more people in the press, really squeeze them in. And once PSG couldn't build out from the back or have that sort of, I wouldn't say easy build up, because Arsenal definitely came to put pressure high in the right moments situationally. But once they were able to sort of, because with those rotations, let me digress a little bit. Those rotations, the players on the ball have to have enough quality to give those guys moving the time to arrive in the right place, the time to arrive in the right spaces, and also be able to assess that situation and anticipate if the pressure is going to be there. So if they can play the pass into space or if it's into feet, those sorts of micro decisions that you're making under pressure, of course, with the intensity, with the physical fatigue, certainly Arsenal were able to really just impose their physical will on them and really cause them an issue. And that's where you start to see the PSG going longer in the situation, going longer with the passes, going longer in terms of trying to build the game, going longer and obviously trying to bypass the Arsenal press. But then again, you're not winning many second balls, So certainly that plays into Arsenal's favor. And what Arsenal were really, really good at doing also, another adjustment in terms of trying to bypass that PSG man-oriented press, was to get Raya more involved in the build-up and then build up with more 8 or 9 players. So it really forced PSG to decide, do we overcommit numbers in this 1v1 sort of press, or are we going to try to be a little bit more clever and have a mix of more zonal, more man-oriented? And once they went into that mix, Arsenal could play out a lot more easy, could build the game a lot more easy, and then were able to sort of get a foothold into the game, settle into the game, start to put pressure on them, and just really be able to start to kind of walk PSG down. And at that point, for me, I started to think, what could PSG do to sort of to adjust? What could they do in the game now? Halftime changes, of course. In terms of personnel, looking at the bench in the midfield, they don't really have many bodies where you look at them and call them physical sort of profiles. Zaire Emery is a really, really excellent technical player, but not necessarily the profile is going to come in over there and make the physical change. So I thought maybe you're looking at having Ruiz a little bit deeper, or not even a little bit deeper, a lot deeper. Maybe sometimes even throw him into the build-up line of 4. Have him, because he of course has the press resistance, have the quality, but definitely has the more of a physical presence to be able to deal with those situations also as well. With Vitinha, very, very good technical player, high press resistance, but you knew that once he had a body on him, it would be quite difficult if they could get close to him. So I would definitely, double pivot was more in effect. They built it with the 3-2 kind of build-up shape, and it sometimes looked like a 3-1, 3-3, depending on which of the 3 in that that third line were dropping in to support the lone player in between. A lot of times it was Dembele in the first half, but of course once Arsenal caught on to that idea in the second half, even caught on to that idea in the first half, it then became there was more onus on Enrique to kind of find a solution for that situation. Of course, Arsenal are always a threat from set pieces. We all know the set piece coach over there. We all know how much they have been able to take that fate of the game and really make it a strength. I think maybe the highest scoring team in Europe over the last 2 seasons. I'm not a stat man, so I don't know all these numbers per se, but don't quote me on that, but you can go check. But yeah, the threat from set pieces, from free kicks, the corners, thankfully nothing too close and direct. I say thankfully, I'm not necessarily a PSG fan. I am a Man United fan, but digress for another conversation, another day. Let's not talk about the struggles I'm facing right now. But yeah, just in terms of PSG, looking at the height disadvantage or the height discrepancy that they had, you're looking at guys like Vitinha, of course, and those sorts of players. How are they going to deal with the size that Arsenal have and the threat that they have from those situations? Also, the ideas. It's not just about being big, but the ideas that they have. A lot of people might have their sort of reservations about how Arsenal employ set pieces, but it is a part of the game. And when you get to this level, again, they had a goal disallowed for offside by Mourinho, so you see the value of that of the set pieces. But when you get to this level of the game, when you get to these stages, these elite stages of the game, semi-finals of the Champions League finals, European Championships, World Cups, it's about the marginal gains, the marginal differences. How am I going to find an advantage here or there where the opponent necessarily doesn't have a strength? Or how can I use that as a strength for me against an opponent's weakness? And so Arsenal having sort of mastered this area of the game, for me, it just speaks, of course, to the work that Arteta has put in, of course, with his coaching staff to really, really try and make sure the team is as balanced or as dangerous in every situation as possible. Of course, we can talk about their lack of an out-and-out striker and how that played some part, or a part actually today. That's a big part. It's hard to say. I've done a lot of analysis, but it's hard to say how big a part not having a striker play today. Of course, you have a striker, you have a better reference point. Maybe you put more crosses in the box. Maybe the way you approach also the final third is a little more different. But not having that profile didn't seem to necessarily play the biggest part. They created decent enough chances. I thought there was a bigger issue with guys like Odegaard not being able to get into the game and establish control really early on. But that was also a surprise based on the quality of the midfield that PSG had in comparison. And then, of course, you're thinking, okay, what adjustments can they make? And one of the adjustments they make was to go more direct, certainly in the second half for Arsenal. They went more direct, longer ball from Raya, and I was trying to think, why are they going more direct? You've kind of established more stronghold into the game, more of a foothold into the game. So why are you going more direct? Why are you trying to bypass that PSG press? They've kind of lost their legs a little bit, So what is the intention behind it? And I was thinking, is it maybe, of course, you bypass the PSG press for sure, which you were doing anyway well with Raya, but knowing you have the physical disadvantage, is it more of a case of, if we're making them make these recovery runs, they're pressing up high, get to the halfway line, then play the long ball, they're going to drop and defend like 50 meters of space in behind, make those recovery runs like 3, 4, 5 times. Is it trying to have more fatigue on these players, put more fatigue on those players, and then know that by the time we get to later stages, where they won't have the physicality to deal with us in these moments, especially in the central areas, especially pressing our build-up, and then that will allow us to establish more territory and build from a higher base and be able to create better quality chances, or at least deny PSG creating good quality chances. And that's kind of what happened towards the end, except that, of course, Arsenal too also managed to find some fatigue in those situations as well. And once that fatigue kind of set in, they didn't necessarily have all the changes to make to really bring in not just fresh legs, but fresh ideas also to the field, or at least, let's say, better execution of the idea that they had really pre-worked on, or they were predetermined anyway. They sort of ran out of ideas and ran out of steam. And for me, here in my notes, I have it right here, the fatigue factor. How much is the fatigue factor going to play a part in how this game is going to end? Once those situations result in goals, it's kind of like, okay, will both teams kind of settle? I know PSG certainly were happy to take that 1-0 lead back to the Stade de France. Oh, Stade de France, oh my goodness, the Parc de France. Oh my god. Yeah, you can tell it's quite late over here. It's past midnight. Sorry, past my bedtime. Happy to take that 1-0 lead back to the Parc de France. Be more compact, hit on the counter. You saw with the introduction of Goncalo Ramos, who should have probably scored the second goal over there. Also linked up with Bradley Barcola, probably should have scored a second goal over there. They were happy to, of course, sit and pick the right times, push out. But because there was less pressure from Arsenal, fatigue factor, they were able to really be patient in the build-up, a lot more patient in the build-up than they were. Maybe let's call it from about the 60th minute to about, let's call it 75th, 80th minute, around about that time. And once they were able to get on the ball a little bit better and establish that control, they were happy to sit in, pick the right time to press, so put pressure when fouls, give the team this time to rest, get in some compact shape. And for Arsenal, you just kind of saw, I won't just call it a lack of ideas, but again, yes, that lack of a goal scorer, of someone who in these sorts of games is going to take nothing or very little or a half chance and turn it into a goal. A ball flashing across the box, just stick a toe out there and get that finished. Flash a couple crosses into the box. Let's see if we can get on the end of something. It's not necessarily that they didn't create good chances. It's when you are creating good chances that you're not having the luck to score, or the opponent is doing really, really well. The goalkeeper is having a fantastic game, in which in Ronaldo's case he did. Then you need that difference maker. And of course, we can talk about summer transfers and what Arsenal are going to do in the summer. Are they going to spend 100 million on Isak? I hope not. I hope not. But at the same time, for the love of football, what an addition that would be, huh? What a fantastic addition that would be. I think if they get Isak, you're probably looking at maybe, a double next year, a Premier League, a Champions League, because that is essentially not just a profile that fits into their game perfectly, but somebody, of course, who, in my opinion, one of the most complete strikers in the game today. Before I forget, I want to take a second to mention Desiree Doué. Guys, what can I say? The puchacha is not dead. The sauce is back. The game is still alive. The game that we love, the beautiful game, Joga Bonito, whatever you want to say, however you want to call it, is still alive. And when I watch those sorts of players, it really just emphasizes that this is a game of skill. No matter how much physicality you have, or strength, or speed, or power, these are really important skills in the game. And really, it's a running game. Football's a running game. You have to run. You just have to run. How much distance you cover, important statistic, important metric. How quick you are, how many sprints you're making. They're important metrics. But this is ultimately a game of skill, and it is very, very awesome to see that players like him are still very much not just in the game today, but able to have a place in today's very, very tactical modern game, very, very sort of, at times restrictive modern game. But to see a player like him still be able to have success in the game today and still be a main factor, I'm really excited to see what he offers in the next leg. I really hope he's fit for the next leg also as well. But yeah, tomorrow, Barcelona, we're going to see, hopefully, more of those kinds of players with Lamine Yamal, definitely, guys whose individual quality, whose skill, whose imagination is the reason why we really love this game. So, what am I expecting come, I don't know if it's a week from now, or I don't know what the dates are, but yeah, second leg is coming, and what can we expect in the second leg? Well, Partey comes back from suspension, so of course that physical profile is there again. Will Enrique resort to as many rotations as he did in the game today? I do not know. I really don't know how sustainable that is, because once Arsenal figured that out, it became a lot harder for them to establish control, and you don't want to necessarily play into their hands again if they're expecting the same thing in the second leg. So it'd be very interesting to see what Enrique is going to do. Off the top of my head right now, I don't have really many ideas as to how to approach it because of the profile that they have, or should I say the lack of profile that they have in their whole squad. But who knows? As for Arsenal, of course, more physical profile coming in as far as Partey, also more control. Partey against Real Madrid wasn't just his physicality, he was excellent in possession also as well. Really, really was able to give them a strong base to build their game, and certainly in the first leg, in the home leg for sure. So how he is going to affect them in terms of in possession, certainly out of possession, we know definitely what he can do, but in possession, what's going to offer for them, certainly probably allows Marino to go back into the more central role, offer them more height, more of a physical presence, more of a profile, more of a target point in their game. And I think, with the tie very, very evenly balanced and finely poised that it is, we definitely have a super exciting tie to look forward to in the second leg. Tomorrow, Barcelona versus Inter Milan. Looking forward to that game. I get to watch Pedri, best player in the world. Probably going to have a video coming out on Pedri very soon. Not probably. Definitely have a video on Pedri coming out really, really soon. But yeah, thanks guys. We'll try to see if we can make this a regular thing. I can't make any promises. You know me. I drop a video once every 20 years. But we'll try and make it a regular thing if we can. If you like, even if you don't like it, I don't care. Just watch it or share it. Give it to somebody who does. But yeah, thanks for joining in. I'll catch you guys soon.